Never clear with
We got dropped. We literally got sprinkled.
Really?
No. Woke up the next morning.
I remember hitting yell at me. A hard clock to call for a beach. It's a hard clock.
We got Kevin.
Oh, really? Yeah. Good business.
That spot wants to post out like that.
Good afternoon. We finally have a gorgeous day, but here we are. Sitting in a room, but first I'm going to read this into the record. This meeting of the June 26th, 2024 Rochester-Olmsted Council of Governments is being broadcast via Microsoft Teams for members of the public, staff members, and others. All policy board members must attend the meeting in person. An audio recording of these proceedings will be produced and posted on the ROCOG website. Online meeting attendees are reminded to keep their microphones muted unless they are speaking to prevent feedback and echo effects. Online attendees wishing to speak are asked to please use the raise hand icon and to identify yourself before speaking. And if anyone experiences any technical difficulties, please let the moderator, Beth Davis, know. So we will call this meeting to order, and I'll ask Beth to call roll.
Mr. Brensford.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Keen.
Here.
Mr. Rossman. Or good, Mr. Rossman.
Mr. All here.
Mr. Rossman. Mr. Mueller.
Here.
Mr. Eisminger.
Here.
Mr. Schimmel.
Here.
Mrs. Conley.
Here.
Mr. Van Scooter.
Here.
Mr. Reimer.
Here.
We have quorum, you may proceed.
All right. Oh, one thing that Allison did bring up, just to let you know, apparently these microphones are very sensitive, so when you finish your sandwich, instead of like folding everything up, if you could just set it to the side, where people who are listening can really hear all of everything, so that would be wonderful, thank you. So first we are going to do the consent agenda, so it is just the minutes for March, so I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Palmer.
Oh,
Second, Keen.
any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our only action item, and it's the allocation of carbon reduction fund program funds for 2025 and 2026, and Allison will present on this.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. We're here today to talk about the carbon reduction program, so CRP fund. This is a federal program that's aimed at reducing carbon emissions on roadway sources. What's important to note here is that this is actually ROCOG's pot of money. You have $430,000 for 2025, and another $430,000 for 2026 to allocate to projects within Rochester's urbanized area. I have a map of that on the next slide. It's also in your packet. We received 2 applications. One for the North Broadway reconstruction project and a second for the 18th Avenue Southwest County Road 147 reconstruction project. It's important to note that these are not in competition with each other, or that we have one application for each year. It's also important to note that both of these projects have received ROCOG STBG funds in the past. So North Broadway, I believe, for 25, and then the Willow 18th Avenue for 26, 27, and 28. So these are all projects that ROCOG has already provided their support for. So on, I guess, the left side of your screen, you can see Rochester in the blue and then Rochester's urbanized area in the red. So one of the requirements of this funding was a project had to be within the Rochester urbanized area, so inside of those red lines. We did do a formal solicitation process for these funds. We utilized MnDOT's application and also MnDOT's carbon reduction calculation tool to really evaluate the 2 projects. We did the solicitation for 30 days between March and April. We brought both those projects, the 2 applications, to your technical committee, or TTAC, for the evaluation and recommendation. And these projects were evaluated clearly based on their carbon reduction benefits, also project readiness, equity, safety, transportation access, and health benefits. I'm also on the image, I'm not sure if you can see it, this is also in your packet, but the stars represent the location of the two projects. So on the two projects, so for 2025, it was the North Broadway reconstruction project. The City of Rochester put in this application for the entire $430,000. The image on the right side, you've seen this image before, but it shows pretty much the river to a little beyond Elton Hills Drive. The project includes a 12-foot multi-use path on each side of the street, as well as enhanced traffic stops. Those are a little more difficult to see on this image. This is also in your packet, understand. But they're identified by these little orange squares right there. The project also includes traffic calming measures such as reduced lane width, center medians, and reduced speed. And ultimately, it reduces reliance on single occupancy vehicles in this area. For 2026, this is a joint application between the City of Rochester and Olmsted County. Again, for the full $430,000 in funds. It's the 18th Avenue and County Road 147 reconstruction. This is still a little bit in the design phases, but it does intend to have a 10-foot shared use path. It's going to fill some gaps in existing trail network to create more connections to employment, to recreation, and to the rest of Rochester's trail network. And it's going to evaluate the time movements and talk about the state. There's going to be some evaluation to make sure it's a safe right of way. I mentioned that we brought this to the your technical committee, TTAC, earlier this month, and the recommendation at TTAC was approval of both fiscal year 25 and 26 funds for the two projects. Again, look at equity, safety, access, and health, as well as the carbon reduction aspects of the project. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. It looks like we also have Dylan from the City of Rochester and Ben from Olmsted County if there are any specific questions about the projects.
I have a question on why do we have 10-foot and 12-foot trails? Why aren't they both 12-foot?
You know, direct that question to Dylan.
Great question. So our typical path, multi-use path, walking, biking, I'm just coming forward, so then it's really sensitive microphones pick me up. With Broadway, we have much more use, knowing we have the trails nearby, the Silver Lake Park. We typically only put a 10-foot path in, but with Broadway, knowing it's going to be more intensely used by people walking and biking, trying to get to whether it's the parks, the recreational system, Silver Lake Foods, the neighborhoods. So we are constructing the Broadway project with a 12-foot wide multi-use path on each side. However, typically we only do 10, so that's why the path along 18th Avenue would only be 10 feet wide.
And I noticed that Broadway is 2025. Aren't we doing this year?
We are, so we already got carbon reduction funds for 2024 that you approved last year for Broadway, and now we're just asking for the second year of our construction. These were available. We've done all the federal paperwork. It's it doesn't add to the project, so we're asking for the 25 funds to go towards the project as well.
Yes.
I guess I'm going to make a motion to approve the TTAC recommendation on the distribution of fiscal year 25 and 26 federal carbon reduction program funding.
Okay, well, we actually have to do two motions. So,
Okay.
yeah, right.
I would recommend two motions. I've got them
Yes.
both up here. So
Okay.
we can just break them into two separate.
All right.
So that would be
So I'll just make the motion for 2025 as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then
I'll make a motion for number 2.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
As presented?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All right, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, and then just moving along to the informational items. There is the Transportation Improvement Program update. Allison will present on that.
Sure, thank you. We've got a couple couple information items. We had to do those carbon reduction allocation. I needed that done this month in order to meet our state deadline on that. So I thought this would be a good time to bring forward a couple of the projects we're working on behind the scenes that are going to be coming forward likely in August and September to the board. Assuming no emergencies pop up, I'm hoping that we don't have a July meeting. So the next time we are here, you'll likely be seeing some action items on some of what I'm about to talk about. The first one is the Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the TIP. I believe everyone has seen the slide. I think I've used this in all 3 presentations I've provided so far. But as a quick reminder, the TIP is a 4-year list of federally funded transportation projects in our NPO area, which is essentially Olmsted County with the extent of the pieces of Chatfield and Pine Island that are outside of the county. So this is a program that ROCOG adopts every year. You adopt it annually in the fall. So we'll be bringing this forward in August and September for a more formal review. And a reminder that approval of this document signifies support for the federal funds to be spent in our area. I know this is probably a bit tough to see, but this is just a graphic that shows the extent of our NPO area and the federal projects for 25 through 28. This is still very much a draft. We will not get the final draft from the state until sometime in early July, but it's a good indicator of what we're likely going to be seeing. This is also, I know this is tough to see, there's some lines, there's some dots, it's in your packet. I also have up behind me over here is going to be a board that we're going to use in public engagement, and there's a QR code that will take you to our website where you can actually expand this map and click on some of the lines to see more information about each of those projects. And it's a draft, it's meant to be that initial visual. Some highlights of the TIP. So right now in our draft, there is $324 million in our community over that 4-year period of 25 through 28. It includes 43 separate projects, 48 miles of pavement, some new buses, some new roundabouts, and 1.8 million in trails projects. So again, that draft is in your packet that outlines some of those projects, still in draft form, and when we bring this back in August, you'll have that final version. But what I really want to talk to the board about today is going to be the board's next steps as well as our team's public engagement. So to start, I got June through September here. To start, we're actually able to piggyback on a City of Rochester open house that's occurring later on this evening over at Riverside Elementary School for the 6th Street open house. We'll have a table there to hopefully get some public input on the TIP, on the projects, just kind of get the word out of what ROCOG is and what we do, and the federal money that's going to be spent in our community. We're hoping to also maybe piggyback on some other existing open houses that might be occurring in July, whether that's the county through Rochester or potentially even at the township meeting in July. But August is when we're really going to ramp up our public engagement. We're required to have a 30-day public comment period. That'll be between August 15th and September 15th. During that time, that final draft of the TIP will be on our website. We'll have a hard copy out here at our office for public review. We hope to have some independent open houses in August during that time frame, likely at the Rochester Public Library, as well as some virtual meetings via Teams. So to try to get some different avenues to get the information out there. And then we'll be bringing this back in August to the board for a public hearing. So hopefully we get the word out there. And if anybody has comments, good, bad, indifferent, there's going to be an opportunity to present those to the board at the August meeting. We'll make any changes between August and September and then bring the final draft, the 25 through 28 Transportation Improvement Program for final adoption in September. Any questions about the TIP? Yes.
I just want to understand, we want to get public input on the on the transportation improvement plan, but the only way you can get a project on this list is by having federal funding. So you really can't, through a public engagement, put something on the tip.
That is correct.
Okay, but are we looking for more comments on the priorities of which we have, or the, or why are you doing, I'm trying to, if I were trying to engage people to come and participate in this, it's to vote for your favorite that's already exists, or, it's a serious sort of, I don't know what we're hoping to get through public engagement.
Yes, that's a great point. So what we're trying, and so that we've been having, back and forth as well. Because I think we started talking about public engagement for the long-range transportation plan. That might be a little bit of a different, conversation. But for the TIP, it is a pretty narrowly focused set of projects. So part of it is we're required to have some public engagement on it, right? So we gotta make this work, even if it's not the most exciting topic for citizens of Olmsted County. But what we're really looking to do is, one, get it out, like who we are. Are you aware of ROCOG? Are you aware that there are avenues to provide comment on transportation projects in general? And then we're gonna have a map out and ask them which ones are they most concerned about? So it really is more of a prioritization, to your point. And if they have, comments and feedback on other areas, they can still send those to us, and we can try to connect them to the right jurisdiction.
Okay, all right, and then my other kind of, I'm glad you're talking about having a map. I think that's what we did before, putting stickers on the ones that are of interest, that kind of thing. But these sort of tables are hard for, after so many years, even the term bonding, I'm trying to think, remind me again what that means. And then the same thing with local, because the local comes from so many different places. So if you do have anything like this for the public, I think it needs a lot of simplification. But I think the key thing is, this is how we get federal fundings into our community. And that's an important thing to communicate.
100% agree on that. That's what we're working to do, is kind of bring this into kind of some everyday terminology.
Okay, thank you.
So to build on that, that's a great question. Looking at on packet page 31, the draft project list, as you look across all those columns, which funds are we actually allocating through ROCOG?
Yeah,
Okay. Federal
Yeah.
Transit.
I think that, I'm sorry, I should have the answer.
And find page 31. Is that the map?
No, it's page 2020, second half of 2025.
I was waiting for you to respond. We'll go over this again during the public hearing in August, but again, this is one of the key things we want to keep messaging to this board, what funds that you actually control. The funds you actually control are what's known as the Surface Transportation Block Grant Funds. Those are just going to show up in that table as federal dollars. The table's not, there are, when underneath the federal category, there are 10 to 12 different types of federal funds that can fit under. But the STPG funds are the ones that are the biggest source of funds that this board controls. And this year we selected for 2028, the 18th Avenue 147 reconstruction project. And that's also the North Broadway project in 25 also received those funds. The other area where you directly can control is the funds we just approved with the Carbon Reduction Program, or the CRP funds. Now, those are kind of the two pots of money you directly control. After that, when it comes to federal funds that are going to, say, transit or going to MnDOT, it is a federal requirement that the MPO board exists and make sure to review those projects, and those projects have been through a public engagement process. And that you approve, the board approves those projects moving forward. You can't really actually move money, yes or no, but you could decline a project or two if you so choose for, which has happened in the past.
So to ask the question again.
Yep.
So are all the federal funds grouped under FTA in this?
Either
On these two pages?
either FHWA or FTA. Yeah.
So it's both of those,
Both of
okay,
those, yeah.
okay, FHWA and FTA, okay, got it.
Is the question, if we were able to highlight which ones ROCOG has control over, would that be helpful in the future?
No,
Okay.
That helps. Obviously, I would hope that you're not gonna show a chart like this to the public, because they're gonna have absolutely no idea.
We're gonna show the graph. And then some highlights.
Is there a way to show on this what has changed, since we do this annually, right? I would assume a lot of this was in existence a year ago, but maybe some have been added. Is there a way to color code or show what's a change?
I love the idea. We'll certainly do that for August, yeah.
Okay.
But just to clarify on that question, any changes to this tip are voted on through our group here, right? The tip.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If a project is in the current construction year or impending construction year, AKA we're technically already in 2020, no, we'll be in 2025, come here in a few days for the state funds. I'm getting complicated, so pull up, Jerry. But during the summer, during this time, as we write the tip and stip, we can make small modifications in the future years, not the current fiscal year, the future years. That has happened and will happen all the time. You know, projects, all of a sudden they do a new cost estimate, they go up in dollar amounts. There was some changes, just talk about some of the changes from the previous one. There was a lot of changes on the project on the MnDOT side because they had some, we like to use the word buckets in transportation. There's different buckets of money and they got different sources and there was a lot of change. Point is, there was a lot of change and all of a sudden this bucket had a lot more money and this bucket had a lot less money. So they had to move some money all over the place. They tried to keep the project in the air. They try to do everything they can to keep everything moving forward in the given year, but sometimes things just slip for other reasons.
To your point, that is the plan when we come back in August, would be to show the changes from what you approved in previous years.
Okay.
But I think your point is correct, that most of it stays the same, and really we're adding one extra year on the back end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm good to move on with informational item number 2, the 2025 Unified Planning Work Program update. Allison.
Yeah, thank you. So kind of a big name, Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, but essentially what this is ROCOG's 2025 budget and work plan. So prioritizing what the ROCOG team is going to be working on in 2025. It's federally required. You again approve this every year. Just looking forward to next year and what we plan on doing, what our deliverables will be. And we hope to bring this forward for adoption in August. So again, just kind of giving you a quick update on what you can expect in August. Before that meeting, you'll actually have that full draft. We're still working through it right now. But 2025 is going to be a relatively simple year for work plan purposes, simply because it is a long-range transportation plan year. So every 5 years, our MPO updates our long-range transportation plan. So we're looking at the population and employment projections from now to 2050. And then what does our community need to do in order to address that growth and that growth that we plan on seeing. And we're also hoping to bring out of that plan next year our identification of areas for future study. So when I bring this to you for 2026, hopefully there will be some plans and then the board can look at, hey, I want to prioritize looking in Northwest-Olmsted County, or I want to start looking at the Willow Creek area, but it'll bring forward ideas on where we want to put our planning resources to study. But in order to do that, we have to first start with updating that plan, and that's going to take the majority of our time in 2025. And the rest of the time is going to be kind of just general MPO administration work. So again, it's working on through the TIP, it's doing next year's UPWP, it's some of these board meetings, it's working with our partners at the state and at the federal level, and just kind of the day-to-day operations to keep the MPO operational. So that'll be spelled out in a lot more detail when we bring that forward in August. But the key point there is that we're getting into a long-range transportation plan year. Have any questions about the UPWP? Anything I should keep in mind as we finalize that document to bring forward.
All right, informational item number 3, the MPO update and bylaws. Roles and responsibilities. Allison.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm gonna busy here. Okay. So I wanted to get this conversation started because it was brought up by a member of the board. I think there might have been a little bit of confusion on kind of what the question was. I also understand that we're just one person above a forum right now, so this conversation should probably be continued to a later meeting when we have maybe a more robust conversation about it. But I did want to get just kind of some of this initial information out there for the board to start looking at and thinking through. It was also a really good exercise for me, being new to ROCOG and being new to NPOs in general. But in your packet, you'll see a couple documents that were provided, but essentially ROCOG is governed by a set of bylaws, which are your procedural documents, as well as an organizational agreement. These were both overhauled in 2021. They hadn't been looked at in maybe 15 to 20 years prior to that. So these are relatively new documents that were created by a committee that of the ROCOG board. Maybe some of you sat on that committee. I saw some memos, but I didn't actually see who sat on that committee. But it was the ROCOG bylaw committee, along with the planning team and the legal department at Olmsted County, who put these documents together. I know there were some comments. The bylaws don't really lay out those roles and responsibilities. Those are actually found in an organizational document that's provided. When you read through that, what you see is that organizational agreement really gives broad planning authority to ROCOG. I forget what the pages is on, mark it here for you. It's on page 40 towards the bottom, in section 1 there, page 40 and 41 of the packet. And the language is ROCOG will be authorized to carry out those comprehensive planning activities it deems to be an area-wide concern on a continuing basis. And it gives some ideas of what that might look like. ROCOG has historically been transportation focused, and for good reason. There are certain federal requirements that we have because of the size of our community, and a lot of our funding is predicated on implementing those requirements at the state and federal level. So there really has to be, our funding is based on having a nexus to transportation. I also took a look at some of the other MPOs in Minnesota. So there are 8 MPOs in Minnesota. 2 of which straddle state lines. That's Fargo-Moorhead and I believe the Lacrosse area planning committee. So 8 in total, 2 by state. I took the Met Council out of this just because, you know, not really a comparable when it comes to this kind of work. But when I looked at all the other NPOs, all the other metropolitan planning organizations in Minnesota, it was very clear that they are strictly transportation focused. Fargo-Moorhead does deviate a little bit. They have a food commission that they work through. I'm assuming those are utilize different funding than funding that we get from the federal government. But when you look at them in totality, it really is transportation planning focused across the state. Doesn't mean that's what we have to stay with, but it does just kind of open up some questions what the board might want to do. Now, I'm not necessarily looking for any direction right now. Just wanted to kind of get all of that in front of the board today. And what I think would make the most sense is if we continue this conversation at a later date, you know, kind of getting a better idea now that you kind of understand what authority you have, get some direction on if you want to make any changes, and then we can take that back, do some research, figuring out what that means for funding, what that means for you know, contracts with the various jurisdictions, and we can bring back some feasibility and some recommendations at a later date.
So I just, again, we're switching back and forth between ROCOG and MPO, and in my mind, I think what I'm hearing here is ROCOG is a joint powers organization, and when we had the responsibility of setting up an MPO, we set it up within the ROCOG structure. But ROCOG could be, you could use the joint powers for other responsibilities. We just don't.
That would be correct.
Okay, so, but again, I think you're bringing up the important point that if you look at using it for other things, we have to be very diligent about what is funded from where, and not get into this pooling resources across joint powers.
Yeah, and also a lot of, if you read through this organizational document as well, a lot of what ROCOG could look at is already being done by local jurisdictions. And, you know, the rules are clear that you can't kind of take that over. You know, you can't take that by force. There's some really good legal language in there about what you can and cannot do.
Okay, good. I want to clarify another point you were making, Allison, and maybe I was hearing you wrong. I mean, we set about in 2021 to look at our bylaws, how we operate, how we do our, what I would call our MPO business. And there was some specific things about what the executive can do versus the full board. There were those kind of discussions. I don't think we redid the joint powers agreement. I think that's an old agreement that's in place. And I don't believe this board can redo it without going back to the authorities that give the joint powers.
So the joint, well, we call it an organizational document. So what's in here was redone in 2021.
Yep.
And what was not attached in here was the, I think, 26 resolutions that we have from 2021 from the different townships, cities, and Ulster County as a whole that have adopted those 2021.
So this is lost on me. So we did go back to the municipalities and the townships and basically have them endorse what we had done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
Okay, I was not aware of that. Thank you.
So what problem are we trying to solve? Or what's the question?
I was gonna say, I think you were gone, the meeting, it was brought up, what else can we do? This is a great number of people that come from a lot of different backgrounds. And there were a lot of things brought up like, hey, this is a great meeting of minds. Let's open a lot of cans of worms. It kind of seemed like that. So, but go on from there.
No, I think that's exactly it. It was brought up by a commissioner who's not here today.
Who was it?
It was Commissioner Sanjum brought it up, and just exactly like meeting of the minds, kind of. There's a lot of important people in this room. Can we go beyond transportation if that was the desire of the board?
He wanted to talk about whether or not we could make recommendations about cannabis use.
That was
That was an example. Yeah.
Well,
I was
think
one
that
of
was
them.
his
That
intent.
was, yeah.
I think he wanted to more discuss, not make policies for other boards, but get our opinions. I think he wanted to know what we could all just discuss in this.
What made me
If we could do
uncomfortable
other
about
things
that
other
is
than
we're not a
transportation.
policy board. And it feels like if we make recommendations, we are still trying to exert a little authority that I don't feel comfortable with.
We have a pretty big job right here just with
I
transportation.
agree.
Does that give you a little bit more background?
And I agree with what's been said. I don't really want to expand or spend much more time on it. So that's just my.
Can I clarify, you haven't received any further refinement or input from Mr. Sinjum since his initial discussion? right?
No, we haven't. It was just, it was good exercise to figure out what.
It's kind of open-ended.
Yeah, just, yeah. Like I said, the language is quite broad, but when you start thinking about how the operations of it, it does get narrowed pretty quickly down to transportation. If you wanted to open it up beyond that, it would require some heavy research and I think work to look at what that looks like in feasibility.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay.
Is there a desire to bring this back at a future meeting?
You want a motion? I can make a motion that we not bring it back. Gets a second or? just-
Yeah, I've been concerned about it too. I'm not looking forward to it, but I think, like you say, there's about 55% of the group is here today, so maybe we shouldn't make those. But I'm not looking to expand the horizons of it, but I wasn't here for the meeting either where it came up.
So my recommendation, because you do have a couple of big things happening at the next couple of meetings, we'll kind of see what that looks like and maybe bring this back for a discussion in the fall, once we get past some of those, once we get past the transportation improvement program and the work program, which kind of come together at the same time. So that'd be my recommendation, bring this back to a larger board meeting in the fall. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, other business. Is there any other business that this board would like to address? The next board meeting will be Wednesday, August 28th at noon, and I believe here. Because we're not going to have a July one, correct? Because we approved this.
My plan is to not have a July meeting in case something comes up that we absolutely have to run a short timeline for. But right now, it does not look like that's the case, and we'll give you a July thoughts. We'll come back with some good stuff in August.
So we just need a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Our meeting adjourned, not motion.
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
We're good.